I would rather live in a tent than borrowing money again, ever, in my life. I might have figured out why we spent money, and I need a sip of water first, and then I can tell you the 3 reasons, what I think. And I'm strongly convinced that those are the reasons why we spend money and why we overspend especially. So we're trying to avoid that, right? We're trying to avoid overspending, and so I'm gonna give you 3 reasons, and maybe one of those is applying to you, and then you can go like, oh, that's why, and then you'll be like, oh, and now I can change my life and change my finances and be like, buying things. I don't need anything because I have everything I need, right? I mean, if you have a job and you have food and you have people you love and you have a roof and a bed, what else do you need? Like, if you are healthy, you can go outside and walk. Like, what else? Tell me, what else do you need? I don't know. Maybe vacation sometimes. I need a vacation. I think overspending is a huge problem, and I think we need to stop. And so, the main reason that we overspend money or we go into debt or whatever is that we think it's okay to have debt. We think it's normal and it's not a problem, and we can take time to pay it off, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm a strong believer that having debt is a problem. I was in debt my entire 20s. I always had I owed 2,000 to my parents for several years. I was not in a rush to pay it off. I was like, oh, let me travel, let me live my life. And I'm like, damn, Mary, I'm never going into debt ever again. That I think is a huge problem because I think that debt subconsciously weighs you down. It's always in the back of your head, and the borrower is slave to a lender. That is 100% true. When I was in debt to my parents, I would have to basically explain why I'm buying something or another thing and haven't paid off the debt. So that is super uncomfortable. Like, oh my gosh, I never want to owe anyone an explanation. For me, not having debt is freedom. I paid off all of my debt, not just the 2,000. I went in debt again, even more, whatever. And I paid it off last year. And I was like, okay, Mary, we are never going in debt ever again. We would rather camp on a campsite than going into that again. And I stick with it. I 100% stick with it. I would not even, I know this probably the weirdest thing anyone has ever said, but I would not even borrow money from the bank to buy a house. Like, if I don't have the money to buy a house, I'm not buying it. That's how I think about money right now. Maybe that changes in the future. I don't think so. We will see. We will see about that. Anyways, so I think that if you think that having debt is not a problem and, oh, you have all the time in the world to pay it off, I think that's a huge problem. And if we think that having debt is fine or not having money on our accounts is fine, then that's where the awareness lags. We need awareness for that. We need to stop and say, that's not okay, we need to change it. And that is basically the first step to changing anything in your life, really. And finances, I think, is one of the most important of all of them. And for me, when I started changing my finances, everything else changed as well. And it's still changing, and it's crazy. Even though my life is still the same, I'm changing everything else. And it's such a beautiful process. And it started with saving money. I saved my first $10,000 for the first time ever at 29 years old, and I will literally spend the rest of my days telling people to save their money and not spend everything, because you don't really need the things that you spend your money on. And even what I borrowed money for in the past, it was traveling, it was buying a car. I would not do that anymore now. I would be waiting until I have the money and then do the thing. Or if I cannot afford to go on vacation, I just wouldn't go. I would just stay at home and I don't know, cry and cook my own food probably. But like I would not go borrow money to go on vacation, or I would not do it anymore. I would rather live in a tent than borrowing money again, ever in my life. Somehow there's a vibe that we think that it's okay to have that and it's not, and when we realize that it's not, we can change it. And that I think is the first step to stopping overspending and stopping buying shit. Okay, number 2 is we don't know how to cope with our emotions. From someone who smoked for 15 years because that was her way of coping with her emotions. Let me tell you that spending money is also a way to cope with emotions, and it's also making you feel better in the moment because you haven't learned a different way to cope with your emotions. Here's the thing, we all encounter difficult emotions, situations where we're like, damn, what am I gonna do about this now? And then we don't really stop. I think that we have learned in our childhood and also in our adolescence a specific way to cope with our emotions, or like a bad emotions that we have. And if that coping mechanism is spending money, you're f***ed. I'm sorry to say it like that, but like if spending money is a way of fixing your emotions, that's bad. That's really bad. And we need to find a different way. For me, it was smoking. It was also shopping. I was also a shopping addict, I would say, for like 10 years. From also, that also started when I was like 15. Wow, I'm realizing this now. I thought, like only smoking was my coping mechanism, but shopping as well. I have a full chapter on this in my ebook, but like and I know shit about it, but now I just realized that that was also a coping mechanism, because it makes you feel good every time you buy something. Hello.
Hello.
I just had the epiphany that shopping was also a way to cope with my emotions. So basically, in our adolescence and childhood, we learned coping mechanisms. Coping means to deal with difficult situations or emotions. And if your coping mechanism is alcohol, cigarettes, shopping, spending money to feel better, or overeating, for example, chocolate. I also realized that when I eat a bar of chocolate, I feel better. I don't look like it, but that's what people do, I think. However, those are coping mechanisms that have negative effects on your life, obviously, and also on your bank account. And so there's also good ways to cope. And if we are aware of this, we can change our coping mechanisms and be like, you know what, the next time I feel off, or I feel like something is wrong or tense, and instead of spending money, instead of buying something to feel better, from now on, I want to replace it. The key is to replace the thing, because if you're like, I'm just like not gonna spend money anymore, it's not gonna work like that. I tried it out. It doesn't work. We have to replace the thing with another thing. Good ways to cope, for example, are sports. I, for example, go hiking. I go out in nature. It makes me feel good. I tried doing sports like at home or running or something like that. It's really difficult for me. Like I can barely get myself to do sports if I say I'm just gonna do sports now. But if I go hiking, I'm super excited. I plan a trip, I go there, and that's also a like sports or coping mechanism if you want it like that. So another thing is journaling. I just spent like 2 hours at the lake, and I was swimming, and then I was reading a book a little bit, and while I was reading the book, I was like, I have thoughts in my head that I need to journal now. And also, this is so cool. If I cannot fall asleep and I journal my feelings, I fall asleep immediately. So if you have trouble falling asleep because your mind is running crazy or you're thinking about the next thing to buy, try journaling. It's like medicine. I don't know why nobody's talking about this, but like try journaling. It's so cool. Super, super effective. Okay, so the second thing is we don't know how to cope, and we can figure out the coping mechanisms that we learned in childhood and our teens, and then basically change them with better ones, replacing them with better ones. The third one, this one is difficult to talk about because it might attack some people, but I think that a lot of us have low self-worth. This also comes from childhood, by the way. I talk about all of this in my ebook, where I basically help you get over your money trauma and start building a better financial future for yourself and start saving and all that stuff. The number one reason for overspending and shopping addiction is that we have low self-worth. The thing is that we spend our lives trying to prove our worth to other people, and that usually, for many people, shows in shopping addiction. So basically, we try to impress someone, or we try to look better, we try to have better status because we don't think very good of ourselves. And the core problem of this is that we think that we need to earn love, while we don't. I recently actually heard this for the first time in my life a couple weeks or months ago. And it was like, there is nothing wrong with you. And I want you to take a moment and really sit with this, because when I heard it, I was like, even now, like, I'm so flabbergasted by the idea that there is nothing wrong with me. I want to invite you to sit down a little bit and think about the fact that maybe there is nothing wrong with you. And then I feel like that all this pressure like just falls off, and all this trying to prove things or trying to be better or to earn love or to earn someone's approval and all these things, it just falls off of you. It's fucking beautiful. You can be free. I know. That's how I feel when I think about that. Actually, there's nothing wrong with me. You know, I can improve in many ways. Obviously, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but if I believe that there's nothing wrong with me, I can stop trying so hard. I can stop hustling. I can stop trying to prove my worth, and I can stop buying shit. I think this is such a big key, because if we emotionally buy, or if we buy things to elevate our status, to show it to others basically, and maybe you've heard this many times, but I think if you really sit down with the thought that there's nothing wrong with you, I think that your life can change, seriously. So you don't need to earn love. You are good the way that you are. You are enough. You don't need to be more or less than you are. You are good the way that you are. And you can finally stop buying shit, because it's not going to fix your problems. Your problems are inside of you, not outside of you, ever. So this got really corny at the end, but I hope that you can accept yourself as you are, because there's nothing wrong with you. And I hope that you can breathe now. I hope that you can sit with this a little bit and really let it in. Not just hear it and move on or keep scrolling or whatever, but like sit with it, slow down. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye. Motorcycle passing by. Okay.